Welcome to Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, mysterious voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels. Today it is Poetry Thursday, another wonderful day to talk about the poetry that exists in the world. And I found a couple of good poems in my search, but I could only go with one in particular. So today I want to talk about a poem that deals with disability and improving and declining in your health. I am referring to Cusped Prognosis by Laurie Clements Lambeth. For those who don't know, Laurie Clements Lambeth is a poet who got her degree at her PhD at Loyola University, I believe it is, somewhere in Texas. She's taught, but she mainly just writes poetry in her spare time. Fairly new poet, writing within the past 15 years. I don't know much else about her besides the fact that she was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis when she was 18. Which is very unfortunate because multiple sclerosis often brings about a great amount of pain, chronic pain for somebody. And to deal with that when you're 18, when you should be off in college, that's not a lot of fun. But she did go to college, so that's great. But her multiple sclerosis brings about a great deal of disability for somebody because chronic pain means they often can't get out of bed. And so you see some of that reflected in her work of those periods where she's improving and also declining, and how she talks about with disability, which is what drew me to her work, because I'm someone who cares about disability and advocating for individuals with disabilities, or helping prop them up so that they can speak out about that thing, and it's not merely me doing all the talking. So yeah, very exciting poet that I've learned exists today. And without further ado, let's talk about Cusped Prognosis. I will read the poem, do an analysis, and we will move on from there. Cusped Prognosis. Time declines all, they say. Progression inevitable, they say. Hills that rise slant down. You have the floor, they say. How far down, I say. They say, how low can you go? How steep a slope, I say. Slight drop, they say. Plateau, slump, not flatline, they say. You understand these words before. Up, down, I say. Words I do not own, but feel I should. Downward, they say, is normal. But plateau is where we'll put you. Stay flexible. Incline towards this wind. Go ahead and Xanaflex, they say. Progress the way of the future, they say. We are inclined to say it's relatively stable. Mesa, not mountain, they say. The fall off hills rise in masses, flat on top. White clouds bite down on them like teeth, I recall, chomping. What's the grade of incline, I say. They say mild decline. They say they feel inclined to know. Come down here, I say, take a tumble, slide, incline your ear. They decline my invitation, making progress, they say, an upgrade, very busy. Your health has reached its quota and is no longer available, they say. Have I been downgraded, essentially going downhill, I say? A positive result yields a negative outcome, they say. They decline to know for sure. Testing negative, they say, has a positive outcome. A decline in contrast sensitivity, I say. They say slow descent, the good kind. A little tip, lucky dip. I assent and say all's downhill from here. I say downhill into the flood. Dive, I say, not cannonball. Controlled fall. I am inclined to take a dip, I say, from time to time, but always rise to the surface. Dip down, they say, tip forward. Don't let us drop now, push you, they say, a nudge. I say it is our policy to decline tips. A pleasure to. Arching off the incline, I incline to a different wind. And so that was Cusped Prognosis by Laurie Clements Lambeth. At first glance, it seems like a really kind of nonsense poem. She talks about inclining and declining and plateauing, and it would bring up a number of questions if you weren't familiar with this terminology before. Like, what does it mean? Your first hint is in the title, Cusped Prognosis, and when you get a prognosis in medicine, your health improves, it inclines, or it gets worse and you decline, or it just stays the same and you plateau. You don't move anywhere. Maybe your doctor will tell you, oh, you're expected to get worse over time. And so I feel like that's where the poem is going, talking about these medical terms. And you might wonder, like, well, what does all of this mean, and what is it in reference to? Well, as I noted in my author introduction, Laurie Clements Lambeth has multiple sclerosis. And over time, your situation improves or it gets worse. I don't think you can fully heal from multiple sclerosis. I might be wrong. Feel free to correct me out there. But you do have periods where you're not feeling as intense pain and you're able to go about and do great things. And there are periods where your health declines and you're in pain for a great deal of time. And I think that's what she's getting at here. Where she's going to doctors and they're saying you're getting better, you're getting worse. And it can be like that's all you're hearing after a certain period of time, like positive results, negative results, tumbling, like a grade of incline. Like eventually, what does that all mean? Like if you're outside, it means nonsense. But when you have multiple sclerosis, that's possibly all you're hearing, and hearing about inclines and declines that matters to you at that point. I will say another aspect of this poem that I think is interesting, and what I think Laurie Clements might also be, what Lambeth might also be getting at, is how she switches between the use of the word I and the use of the word they. Like she says, time declines all, they say. And she also says, how steep a slope, I say. And so you see that constant switch throughout the poem. And I do think it's an attempt for her to regain some control in this poem. It's because it seems like those unnamed people who might be doctors or her family or something like that, they're taking control of her health in a way that maybe she doesn't want, or it's that she feels like she doesn't have as much control over. And so when she says, I say, like it feels like she's regaining that control, or trying to dictate where she wants to go and how she wants to feel about her diagnosis, and what it looks like for her in the future. I know, like a lot of people with disabilities, they lose that sense of control, and it sort of like it's a loss of autonomy that doesn't feel good. Working in that field, I see that a lot, and how it's important to allow those individuals to regain control, so that they can feel like they're a complete human, because they are a complete human. It's just we sometimes mess up and take away that autonomy, and they don't feel that way anymore. So I do think that is an aspect of this poem, which you see in other areas, that other poems that I've read too. So I feel like this is a big theme of all that she's been writing over the years. And you would think that, with constantly being told that your health is worsening, like that would just be awful. But I think she does live for those moments when her health gets better. Because near the end of the poem, she says, I am inclined to take a dip, I say from time to time, but always rise to the surface. Dip down, they say, tip forward. And she also says, I say it is our policy to decline tips, a pleasure to. Arching off the incline, I incline to a different wind. So two things I think she's getting at there. The first is that, she knows that things are going to get a little bad for her. But she's ultimately going to rise to the surface, that things will improve for her, or she will take the attitude that will allow her to stay more positive and feel better about how things are going to be. And she also says she inclines to a different wind. So maybe if someone tells her, like, oh, you can't do something, or like things are going to be pretty bad for you. Like, she's like, no, I refuse to accept that. I incline to a different wind. I believe it's going to be different for me, and I'll make that happen. So this poem ultimately is very optimistic, even though at first it seems like, your health is declining. It's a matter of attitude, and it's a matter of willing to take the initiative to make it so that this is not who you are, that you're more than just your diagnosis. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Cusped Prognosis by Laurie Clements Lambeth. A pretty quality poem. I recommend that you go check it out. I will put a link to it in the description so that you can find it and read it. Tell me your thoughts on it, or just tell me what else you thought of my review in the comments below. I would love to hear from you and have a discussion there. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about this poem, as well as Poetry Thursday. Get that going on BookTube. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and prognostic travels. Farewell.